Although the night was dark, the lights in the Griffith residence were still brightly lit up. Just as Elise was about to alight from the car, Alexander suddenly called out to her. "Congratulations." She was confused by his sudden reaction, so he added, "Congrats on getting first place in the Math Olympiad." After coming back to her senses, she replied, "It's all thanks to you for circling the main points for me. It's because you are talented." He was rather blunt as he murmured, "You are quite talented at dancing too." Instantly, she was rendered speechless. He must have seen me. I was just having fun. There's nothing talented about me at all. It's getting late, so I'm off to bed. You should too. Good night." After that, she quickly got out of the car and entered the house without waiting for his reply. Her fleeing look somehow felt a little adorable in Alexander's eyes. When Elise got back to her room, she quickly closed the door before breathing a huge sigh of relief. Then, she walked to the mirror to look at her ugly face and began to remove the makeup. Not long after, she sighed as a gorgeous face appeared in the mirror. When will this end? The next day, as soon as she arrived at the classroom, she handed the invitation letter that she prepared to Michaela. "My family is hosting a banquet tonight at my home. I would like you to attend." Looking at the golden invitation letter, Michaela was a little surprised. "Is this for me?" "Of course it is. You are the first friend that I made when I came here. You must come to the banquet tonight." After receiving her invitation, Michaela nodded her head firmly. "All right. I'll be there." With a smile, Elise went back to her seat. "Have you heard that the Griffith family is hosting a banquet tonight? My dad has already received an invitation from them." "Is that true? Does that mean we get to see the famous young master of the Griffith family, Alexander? I heard that not only is he handsome, he is rich too. I once saw him from afar, and I can say that he is the most handsome man that I have ever seen. If I can marry him, I will definitely die a happy woman." Listening to their words, Elise suddenly paused, a pen in her hand. "I can't believe Alexander is so highly regarded among these girls." However, she didn't pay much attention to their gossip, so she continued with her schoolwork. On the other hand, Danny saw Elise the moment he came into the classroom. Even though he didn't want to admit defeat, he wasn't a sore loser, so he came to her and placed a cup of smoothie on her desk. "This is for you, boss. You should drink it before it melts." Elise was startled at first, but after staring at the smoothie on her desk, she subconsciously lifted her eyes. However, he quickly avoided her gaze and sat back on his seat. With a smile, she replied, "Thanks." Meanwhile, Danny was angry with himself deep down. "Why did I come up with that bet in the first place? I really should know better," he muttered inside to himself. As the main focus of tonight's banquet at the Griffith residence, Elise didn't attend school during the evening. Instead, she was brought to a high-fashion store by Danny. After looking her up and down, Danny couldn't help but say, "You have quite the figure, but it doesn't go well with your plain face." Elise felt speechless when listening to him, so she turned toward the designer. "I just need a simple dress. I can apply my makeup by myself." After taking a serious look at her, the designer said pertinently, "The curves and proportions of your body are quite good. Do you want to try this dress?" With just a glance, Elise was immediately mesmerized by the dress the designer was referring to, but she quickly realized that it would be a huge waste if such a beautiful dress was put next to her ugly face. "What do you think, Miss Sinclair? Do you like it?" In the end, Elise shook her head. "It doesn't feel right. I think we should look at other dresses. I feel that this dress looks quite nice. Do you want to try it first?" Danny asked. However, she still rejected the offer. "There's no need for that. I don't think that I'm suitable for that kind of dress. Let's try something else." In the meantime, she couldn't help but take a peek at the dress, but in the end, she averted her gaze and chose an unremarkable dress. Due to her small figure, she still looked gorgeous even in a normal dress, but her face was too unattractive to look at. Looking at her, Danny couldn't help but sigh. Why did your mother give you such a gorgeous body, but not a beautiful face? That's enough. Keep your mouth shut. He wanted to say something else, but after losing the bet, he couldn't afford to offend her, so he remained quiet afterward. After changing into the dress, Elise hid in the dressing room with her makeup and simply adjusted her wig to make herself look slightly better than usual. In the end, she nodded her head with satisfaction. All right. That'll be enough. At 7 p.m., the lively banquet at the Griffith residence was already filled with people. The Griffith family had a high status in the city, so everyone they invited was a prominent figure in the business world in the city. Presently, everyone was gathering together to chat with each other. As the main focus of the event, Elise entered the hall alongside Danny. The moment they came in, they immediately attracted the eyes of everyone else. Is that young Master Danny? He really looks like a talented young man. Who is that girl next to him? Why have I never seen her before? I'm not familiar with her, but she must be someone special to be able to stand next to young Master Danny. Even if Elise had an unpleasant-looking face, the people around her didn't pay much attention to it, because they were all busy guessing which wealthy family she came from that enabled her to enter the hall alongside Danny. However, what they didn't expect was that not only was she able to enter the hall alongside Danny, she was also close with the patriarch of the Griffith family, Jonah. Ellie, come here. I want to introduce you to some of my friends. Jonah quickly waved at her the moment he saw her. She quietly walked over to him and said affectionately, All right, Grandpa. Come, Ellie. This is Mr. Baldwin, and he is a friend of the Griffith family. Nice to meet you, Mr. Baldwin. This is Mr. Watson from the Watson Corporation. Hello, Mr. Watson. Everyone, this is Elise Sinclair. She is my granddaughter and the main focus of today's event. Jonah earnestly introduced Elise to everyone. Suddenly, she felt as though she was being treated as a celebrity. I heard that Miss Sinclair has gotten first place in the city's Math Olympiad at such a young age. It's really impressive. If you work hard in the future, you'll definitely get into a good university. Thank you for your kind words. I'll try my best. In the end, Elise got to know a lot of people in the business world with Jonah, but as she didn't want to socialize in the first place, she quickly found an opportunity to leave the main hall and sat on a stone bench in the backyard to have a rest. Elise stood next to a pond in the Griffith residence's huge garden, feeling the pleasant evening breeze blowing at her. Just when she sat down on the bench, Jamie came out of nowhere and patted her shoulder before sitting beside her. Boss, did you come here to hide? She was a little surprised to find him here. Why are you here? He shrugged his shoulders and answered. My old man has something else to attend to, so he sent me here. The Keller family also had a high status in the city, while also having a business relationship with the Griffith family, so it wasn't a surprise that his family received an invitation. By the way, he looked around and purposely lowered his voice. Alexander's people have stopped looking for you, so they probably won't be looking for you anytime soon. I hope so. From now on, I want you to reject any offer for me to join a car race, no matter the price. Don't worry, boss. I understand. After that, he stood up and said, I'm going inside now. We shouldn't be seen together. Elise hummed and he quickly went inside. However, the moment he left, another unwanted visitor came over to her. It was none other than Ashlyn. With a bright smile, she walked over to Elise. Congrats for winning the Math Olympiad, Elise. Elise was not close with her, so she politely replied. Thank you. However, Ashlyn smiled and sat next to her. Actually, I understand your concerns. You come from a poor family in the countryside. So you think that it is impossible for you to marry into the Griffith family, solely based on your identity, even though you are lucky enough to gain Grandpa Griffith's appreciation. That is why you work hard on your studies, because it is the only way for you to gain any status. Am I right? Listening to her, Elise remained emotionless as she neither agreed nor refuted her comments. To her, the opinion of an outsider didn't matter at all. Besides, she didn't plan to marry into the Griffith family since she only promised Robin to stay here for a year. As long as she didn't have any feelings for the Griffiths, she could leave immediately. Seeing that she was being ignored, Ashlyn was a little annoyed inside, but she remained calm, and revealed a slight smirk. If I were you, I wouldn't waste my energy studying all these pointless things. Instead, I would find myself a better cosmetic surgeon. She was obviously making fun of Elise's looks. Ashlyn, don't you think that's a bit harsh? Why are people from the countryside inferior to others? Or are you saying, having a pretty face is a nice stepping stone on being successful? I'm sorry, but our views don't align with each other, so there's no point in continuing this conversation. After that, Elise stood up, and was about to leave, but Ashlyn halted her. Elise, don't think that you can do whatever you want, just because Grandpa Griffith favors you. I can still ruin your reputation with the snap of my fingers. What are you trying to do? The moment her words came out, Ashlyn saw someone from the corner of her eye. Instantly, she revealed a teasing smile, and pushed herself using Elise's hand. Elise instinctively tried to grab her, but it was too late. With a splash, Ashlyn fell into the pond. Help! Please save me! Help! She kept on crying for help, while struggling in the water. Before Elise could understand what was going on, someone came over, took off his jacket, and jumped into the pond to save Ashlyn. Elise, I did nothing wrong to you, so why did you push me? Ashlyn immediately questioned, as soon as she came up. Jack, who saved her, remained silent as he gave Ashlyn his jacket to put on. Then, he glared at Elise and uttered coldly, "Apologize to her." With a cold smile, Elise ignored him, and stared at Ashlyn. So this is your plan? How childish can you be? Unexpectedly, Ashlyn lowered her head, and began to cry pitifully. Even if she wasn't saying anything, she perfectly portrayed the aggrieved emotions of a victim. Apologize to her. Jack grabbed Elise's wrist, and ordered her to apologize again. She looked at him with a proud expression and said, I did nothing wrong, so why should I apologize? Meanwhile, Ashlyn tugged on the corner of Jack's shirt. It's fine. I believe that she didn't do it on purpose. No. Elise, this is your last chance. Apologize to her. Jack was growing impatient with Elise's indifferent attitude. Elise Sinclair. Elise, however, took a deep breath and replied, I told you that I did nothing wrong. Why should I apologize? Then, Ashlyn let out a sneeze, so Jack quickly went over to help her. I'll bring you in to change your clothes. She gave him a quick reply and let him help her upstairs to a bedroom. Before they left, Jack turned around, and glared at Elise with a strong warning in his eyes. You'll apologize to her later. Wait. Elise shouted to halt him. She had a strong sense of principle, so she wouldn't allow anyone to slander her. Let's clear everything up before you leave. Elise, what are you trying to do? Ashlyn's clothes are completely soaked, so she must change her clothes immediately. At that point, Jack had lost all his patience. That is her own fault. It has nothing to do with me. Now, I want to clear my name, she announced seriously, showing no signs of backing down. You want to clear your name, right? We'll do it in front of Grandpa, then. They didn't cause a huge commotion in the garden, but they still attracted the attention of many guests, since Jack was an eye-catching celebrity. Gradually, the guests gathered around them. Ashlyn could feel the gazes of everyone around her, so she instinctively hid inside Jack's arms. Holding her, he was about to bring her away from the scene, but his path was blocked by Elise. I told you that you can leave when I clear my name first. What are you all doing? Jonah came over with the crowd. Seeing him coming over, Ashlyn took the chance to speak first with an aggrieved tone. Grandpa Griffith. Looking at her wet clothes, Jonah asked with concern. What happened? Why are your clothes all wet? Go and get a set of clean clothes for Miss Lawson. After hearing his orders, the maid quickly went to get a set of clothes. In the meantime, Jack was staring coldly at Elise as he uttered calmly. Grandpa, it was Elise. She pushed Ashlyn into the pond. Luckily, I came here in time to prevent any accidents. His words immediately caused an uproar. Suddenly, everyone began to whisper among themselves. As for Jonah, he wasn't fazed by Jack's words at all. Instead, he looked at Elise and asked, "Ellie, what happened?" She pouted her lips aggrievedly, and explained everything to him. "I didn't push her. She jumped into the pond by herself." Seeing her making an excuse, Jack was immediately enraged. "Elise, I really don't know you anymore. How could you not admit to your own doing? What did I do wrong? Did you see me push her into the pond with your very own eyes?" Elise countered. Her words instantly startled him. Jack was standing some distance away from them just now, so he didn't hear their conversation. However, he could see them pushing each other in the end, which resulted in Ashlyn falling into the pond. After that, Ashlyn blamed Elise for pushing her, so he automatically assumed that she was telling the truth. Seeing that Jack was rendered speechless, Jonah turned toward Ashlyn. The Lawson family was also considered as old friends of the Griffith family, and Jonah had watched Ashlyn grow up ever since she was a child, so he asked her, "Ashlyn, can you tell me what happened?" The moment his words came out, Ashlyn began to shed some tears, which eventually dripped on the ground. If any ordinary person saw her expression, they would definitely feel sorry for her, but Jonah was an experienced man who had seen and met all kinds of people in his life, so he was able to see through her act. However, to preserve the reputation of the Lawson family, he asked again, "You can tell me anything. I'll do everything I can to make it up to you." Listening to his words, she burst into tears. "Grandpa Griffith, I'm fine. It's all my fault. Please don't blame it all on Elise. I believe that she didn't do it on purpose." Ashlyn kept on asking Jonah not to put all the blame on Elise, but her words were obviously saying that she was the guilty party. "Are you saying that Ellie pushed you into the pond?" Without saying a word, Ashlyn gently nodded her head. "Grandpa, I didn't." Elise tried to explain herself, but Jonah interrupted her. Then, he said to Ashlyn, "If that's the case, I definitely can't allow you to be wronged. However, I must find out the truth before making a decision." "Grandpa, Ashlyn already told you what happened, so why are you?" Before Jack could finish his words, Jonah glared at him, causing him to swallow his words. "Everyone, I'm sorry for the embarrassment. This is just a children's argument, but I would like everyone to be the judge here. If my granddaughter, Elise, actually did such a thing, I'll definitely handle it fairly, and give justice to the victim." Seeing that Jonah was no longer addressing her by her name, but calling her the victim, Ashlyn somehow felt worried deep down. She wanted to say something else, but he didn't give her the chance. "Even though there isn't much in the Griffith residence, we still have basic security measures installed everywhere. In this back garden, we have installed several surveillance cameras, so please follow me to the hall. We will understand the ins and outs of this matter together, so that a fair judgment can be made for these two." As soon as Ashlyn heard his words, she could feel her leg melting, while her expression instantly changed. She subconsciously tugged Jack's shirt and stuttered, "Tell Grandpa Griffith there's no need for that. I know that Elise didn't do it on purpose. I don't blame her." Hearing her words, Jack furrowed his brows tightly, but since they were friends for many years, he still chose to believe her. "Don't worry, Ashlyn. Grandpa promised that he won't allow you to be wronged, so we'll just leave it to the truth." But she wanted to say something else, but since no one was listening to her, she had no choice but to follow everyone to the hall. At the moment, the hall was filled with people staring at a big screen. Alexander, who just arrived at the scene, asked, "What's going on?" A maid whispered to him, "I heard that Miss Sinclair pushed Miss Lawson into the pond, so Mr. Griffith is now checking the surveillance video." Immediately, Alexander raised his brows slightly. Why would Elise do such a thing? What is she plotting? After knowing what happened in the back garden, Jamie quickly went to Elise and asked, "Boss, are you all right?" Suddenly, the latter realized that the surveillance video might have captured her conversation with Jamie in the garden moments ago, so she whispered something in his ear. After understanding her orders, he quickly slipped out of the crowd. Meanwhile, everyone in the hall was staring at the big screen, waiting for an answer. 2 minutes later, the big screen suddenly turned black. What happened? Someone asked. Looking at the big screen, Ashlyn breathed a sigh of relief, but she was completely unaware that Jack had narrowed his eyes after seeing her reaction. About 30 seconds later, the big screen was back operating as usual. The scene of the back garden was shown on the screen again, but there was no footage of Elise and Jamie together. Instead, the video jumped straight to Ashlyn's conversation with Elise. Actually, I understand your concerns. You came from a poor family in the countryside, so you think that it is impossible for you to marry into the Griffith family, solely based on your identity, even though you are lucky enough to gain Grandpa Griffith's appreciation. Ashlyn's voice rang in everyone's ear, causing her to stumble, her face pale. If I were you, I wouldn't waste my energy studying all these pointless things. Instead, I would find myself a better cosmetic surgeon. Elise, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because Grandpa Griffith favors you. I can still ruin your reputation with the snap of my fingers. Listening to her own words, Ashlyn quickly covered her ears, while the screen showed her pulling Elise's hand, before jumping into the pond. It was at that moment that the truth was finally revealed. Jack was speechless as he stared at Ashlyn in disbelief. It's not what it seems. Jack, you have to believe me. She went over and grabbed his arm, but he immediately shook her hand away. Does this mean everything you told me just now was a lie? Tears kept on rolling down her face, but now, Jack thought it was extremely fake. We've known each other for so many years. Do you know that you've completely betrayed my trust in you? Please listen to me. It's not what it seems. She was still trying to defend herself as she never thought that it would come to this. Now that the truth is revealed, I believe that you owe Ellie an apology, Miss Lawson. Jonah announced seriously, without the usual kind tone he had for Ashlyn. After watching the video, the onlooking people couldn't help but sigh, while glancing at Ashlyn with scathing gazes. At this moment, she couldn't wait to bury herself inside a hole in shame. Hugh, who was Ashlyn's father, stood in the crowd with an exasperated expression. When Ashlyn saw her father, she felt as though she was clutching to a lifeboat. Dad, please help me. Please. However, Hugh was filled with rage as he shook her hand away and turned toward Jonah. Mr. Griffith, I'm really sorry for this embarrassment. Ashlyn just got back from abroad, so she still doesn't understand how we do things here. Again, I'm sorry for the embarrassment. Mr. Lawson, do you think we'll neglect all her actions because of a simple excuse like that? Alexander slowly walked toward him and said that with a calm tone, but his words instantly caused Ashlyn's expressions to change drastically. Alexander, she bit her lower lip tightly. Not only did she shoot herself in her foot, she also left a bad impression in Alexander's mind. She was really regretting her actions, but there was no way for her to turn back time. However, Alexander ignored her and said to Hugh directly, Mr. Lawson, our family is very protective of our members. No matter how useless Elise is, she is still a part of the family. Have you ever considered what implications this incident may have on the reputation of the Griffith family? Hugh initially wanted to be the peacemaker. After all, the Lawsons and the Griffiths had been friends for many years, so Jonah would consider his reputation and not look into the incident too much. Unexpectedly, Alexander, who was infamous for being difficult to deal with in the industry, suddenly appeared to handle the situation himself. If I offend Alexander today, it'll definitely affect the Lawson family's business in the future. After weighing drawbacks, he quickly pulled Ashlyn over. I want you to apologize to Miss Sinclair right now. Ashlyn, however, didn't expect that her own father would give her up. Dad, what are you doing? Apologize to her now. If she generously forgives you, this matter will end here. However, if she doesn't forgive you today, you can forget about going back home tonight. At first, everyone was unfazed by his words, but after listening to him carefully, they couldn't help but praise him as a shrewd businessman who had been in this industry for a long time. Every one of his words was directed straight at Elise. Indirectly, he was saying that if Elise was a petty person and refused to forgive Ashlyn, she would cause Ashlyn to be cast aside by her own family. What an intelligent move. Ashlyn didn't want to apologize, but at this point, she had no other choice. I'm sorry, Miss Sinclair. I was wrong. Meanwhile, Jonah squinted his eyes and remained quiet while everyone waited for Elise's answer. Elise knew that even though Jonah wanted to protect her, he wouldn't wish to turn against the Lawson family, since the two families had many years of friendship. However, she was unwilling to allow herself to be wronged as she always had a strong sense of principle. I won't mess with others if they just leave me alone, but if they think that I'll keep quiet and accept this, I must retaliate. Miss Lawson, you don't really need to apologize to me. For a moment, Ashlyn was startled as she suppressed her anger and asked, "What do you mean?" "Nothing. I just want to tell you that I'm not the person you should apologize to. Firstly, you should apologize to Jack because you betrayed his trust and friendship. Secondly, you should apologize to your father because you are not the only one being embarrassed in front of everyone. Lastly, you should apologize to everyone in this hall, because not only has your little act dampened everyone's mood, you've also wasted everyone's." How dare! Ashlyn felt ashamed, but she couldn't utter a word to refute Elise's sharp comments. As for the crowd, they couldn't help but feel impressed by what Elise just said, since they didn't expect this insignificant-looking girl to be this intelligent and well-spoken. "Mr. Griffith, your granddaughter really is something else," someone praised. Listening to their praises, Jonah smiled and said, "She is still a young and naive girl. I hope that you all can aid her in the future." With that, everyone naturally understood Elise's status in the Griffith family. It seems like Elise's status in the Griffith family should not be underestimated. We will need to associate with her more in the future. All right. Ellie, it's time for us to go in. Jonah pulled Elise away, leaving a little leeway for the Lawson family. Naturally, Hugh understood his intention, so when everybody left the scene, he glared at Ashlyn angrily and growled, "Get the hell out of here, and stop embarrassing the family." "Dad," Ashlyn muttered, feeling dissatisfied. "I did nothing wrong. Why isn't my own father protecting me?" Instead, he stood on Elise's side. However, Hugh ignored her and wiped off the sweat on his forehead before following the crowd into the hall. Fortunately, Ashlyn's little incident didn't affect the banquet much. After Elise followed Jonah into the hall, many people came over to fawn on her, and she knew that it was all because Jonah protected her just now in front of everyone. Then, she glanced at Alexander, who was standing gracefully among the crowd. She couldn't help but think of what he said just now, so her eyes were locked onto him for a few seconds. Suddenly, he turned around, and their eyes met, so she quickly looked away, but he still walked toward her afterward. Initially, she was stunned and wanted to leave, but for some reason, she felt that her legs weren't heeding to her orders. The next second, he walked over to her and asked, "Are you all right?" She turned around and smiled. "I'm fine. Thank you for what you did just now." However, he remained silent and stared at her. After a pause, he asked, "Do Jamie and you know each other?" She was startled at first, but she quickly composed herself and explained while looking at him. "I just met him at the banquet." "Is there a problem?" Alexander shook his head. Even though she did well to hide her emotions, she still couldn't escape from his constant observation. He knew that she was lying, but he chose not to dig too deep into it. "It's nothing. I just want to warn you that Jamie might not be who you think he is. You should avoid him as much as possible." "Huh? What is he talking about?" "I've known Jamie for many years, and I know very well what kind of a person he is." Of course, she didn't say it out loud. Instead, she gave him a simple reply, acknowledging his advice. "Alex." Then, Jack came over and greeted Alexander first, before looking at Elise apologetically. "I want to apologize for what happened just now. I shouldn't have blamed you without figuring out the truth first." Upon hearing it, Elise accepted his apology. "It's fine, but I hope that you've learned your lesson." Elise was rather generous, but Jack pursed his lips and was unable to stifle the urge to explain on behalf of Ashlyn. "Ashlyn is not usually like this, she is actually a really nice person." Something must have gotten into her today, and caused her to behave this way, or maybe she didn't manage to control herself, and did it in the spur of the moment. Elise, please don't take it to heart. Judging from his words, it was obvious that Jack treated Ashlyn as a close friend and he trusted her very much, even after that sort of an incident had happened. Don't worry. As long as she doesn't mess with me, I'm not going to provoke her on purpose. Although Elise had no intention to meddle in someone else's relationship, this might not be the case for Ashlyn. Upon hearing it, Jack breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you, Elise. You are welcome. All right, then. I'm performing in a concert soon, so here are 2 VIP concert tickets for you as a token of my gratitude. Elise rejected his offer this time. I'll pass. I have no intention to get involved in your matters, especially after the incident last time. I don't want to get killed by your fans, thank you very much. You can save it for someone else who may need it. All right, then. I'll treat you to a meal someday. Elise found it a good suggestion. That's nice, but you better make sure that it's good, else it won't count. Upon hearing it, Jack agreed readily. Rest assured, I definitely won't let you down. Then, he turned to Alexander and said, Alex, please join us when the time comes. It has been such a long time since we last had a gathering. I'll find a day to host a meal and everyone can get together. Hey, how could you do this? You agreed to treat me to a meal, but why are you suddenly organizing a gathering with your brothers? Feeling upset, Elise glared at Jack angrily, which seemed quite adorable to Alexander. The latter raised his eyebrows and thought to himself. Why do I suddenly find Elise pretty? Huh. Don't be upset. I'll buy you another meal separately. It was only then that Elise was satisfied. That's more like it. Don't forget that you owe me 2 meals now. Okay. It's only 2 meals, I'm sure that I can afford them. He then turned to Alexander. Alex, will you come? We'll see. Alexander replied. I'll come if I'm free. Okay, we'll leave it at that, then, Jack murmured. After the banquet had ended, the guests returned to their respective homes. Elise returned to her room, and locked the door, then sat before the dressing table, to remove the ugly makeup from her face, revealing her delicate features. After applying a face mask, just as she was about to go to bed, her phone in her pocket suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. She darted a suspicious glance at it, and tapped on the screen to accept the call. Hello, Elise, do you remember me? Upon hearing the familiar voice, she instantly knew the identity of the caller. Is that you, Better? I recently returned to the country and I kind of missed you, so I called you. How have you been lately? Do you have time to meet up with me? Elise then replied. It's rather inconvenient for me as I'm currently staying with my relatives in Athessia. You are in Athessia? His tone revealed that he was surprised and he laughed. It's such a coincidence. I'm in Athessia as well. Let's meet up tomorrow. With that, he sent her a location via WhatsApp, and when Elise tapped on it, she found that it was actually less than a 30-minute drive away. That's quite near. Yeah. I'll come and pick you up tomorrow. Elise gave it some thought and agreed. On the following day, which happened to be a weekend, Elise left the house, after informing Jonah that she was going out. Instead of getting a driver from the house to chauffeur her to where she was supposed to meet Better, she took a cab. The moment she arrived, a black Maybach slowed down before her, and the next instant, the car window was rolled down, revealing Better's face. Get in, Elise. Elise was quite surprised that he was able to recognize her under the heavy makeup. Without any hesitation, she opened the car door and hopped in, and the car sped off. Better drove her to where he stayed. It was an old bungalow with a historical ambience. One had to bear in mind that every old bungalow had its own story, and those who were able to live in old bungalows were either from wealthy or political backgrounds. Elise, what have you been doing lately? I heard that you returned to high school, and became a high school student again. Isn't that a waste of your talent? Better, stop pulling my leg. I have no other choice. She knew that Better's reason for wanting to meet up with her was never to simply catch up and chat. Hence, she asked, "Better, is there a reason you wanted to see me?" He chuckled. USMART*SS. I can never hide anything from you. Better, we are not strangers, so why are you being so courteous toward me? Just tell me how I can help you. Better admired how straightforward she was, and went straight to the point. Indeed. I wanted to see you, because I really need your help with something. I know that I won't be able to find anyone else who could outshine you when it comes to languages. Therefore, I need your help to translate a French document into both Chinese and English. I believe you are also aware of the nature of my job. Although I seem like an ordinary foreign language teacher on the surface, I'm actually part of the general administration. Our job is highly confidential, so you have to make sure that the document is treated with the utmost confidence. Your reward will be 1 million. I'll transfer the amount directly into your account after the job is done. Elise listened to what he had to say and took note of the important points. Basically, she would help him to translate a French document into both Chinese and English, which she would then be rewarded with 1 million. Truth be told, the amount was rather tempting. However, just as what Better had said, the job definitely wouldn't be an ordinary, simple translating task. It was a mutual understanding that he requested for her to not only treat the document with confidentiality, but to not mention the content of the document to anyone as well. Okay, I agree to the terms. When can I start? Surprised by her prompt agreement, he answered. I'll give you the physical document shortly. Is 3 days sufficient for you? Elise hummed in response. Yeah. Okay, please hold on for a moment. With that, he rose to his full height and went upstairs, leaving Elise alone in the living room. Just then, the doorbell rang. As Better was still upstairs, she went to open the door. However, the moment the door swung open, she was greeted by Jasmine and her parents, who were standing at the door with expensive gifts in their hands. As soon as she saw Elise, Jasmine, who was initially wearing an expectant look on her face, was stunned before she thought of something and growled, "Elise, why are you here?" Elise was equally surprised by their sudden appearance, but she didn't explain and merely asked, "Who are you looking for?" Upon hearing Elise's question, the Andress immediately prevented Jasmine from showing her an attitude. Then, they responded with another question. "Is this Mr. Better's residence?" "We are here to see Mr. Better." Once she heard that they were here to look for Better, Elise uttered, "In that case, please hold on for a moment." However, as soon as she said it, his voice was heard from behind her. "Who's at the door?" he asked as he walked down the stairs, while holding the sealed documents in his hands. When he saw that he had guests, he kept the said documents away, before he headed toward the door. "You must be Mr. Better. I'm Jasmine's father. I was the one who called earlier." Jasmine's parents answered in a respectful manner the moment they saw the man. Their response seemed to remind Better of something. "Yes, please come in then." Soon after that, the family of 3 entered the house, when Jasmine couldn't help but ask, "Mr. Better, are you going to accept Elise as your student?" Instead of answering her, Better turned to Elise. "Do you two know each other?" Elise hummed in response. "We are classmates." Now that he understood the situation, he finally replied, "She is not qualified to be my student." Not only was her fluency in foreign languages better than his, she was also fluent in French, German, and Italian. In fact, she was the only language genius whom he had ever known in all his years of teaching. Nonetheless, Jasmine mistook Better's words as Elise being unqualified to be his student due to her poor fluency in languages, which made Jasmine elated. "Mr. Better, would you accept me as your student then?" Better raised his eyebrow. "I recall that I've already told your parents beforehand that whether I accept you as my student depends on whether you have the talent. I'll certainly agree if you possess a talent for languages, but if you don't, I'm afraid that I have to reject your request." Jasmine has always been fluent in Chinese since she was a kid, Mr. Better. All the other teachers have praised her language aptitude, so please accept Jasmine as your student. Elise, who didn't pay much attention to their conversation, glanced at Better and interjected, Mr. Better, have you prepared the documents that I need? Can you please give them to me now? I'd like to head home." Then, he retrieved the documents with ease from behind the television. "Here you go." The two of them exchanged glances wherein she immediately understood his unspoken words. She accepted the documents and expressed, "I shall take my leave then. Let me see you out." With that, Better headed out with Elise under the watchful gaze of the Anders family. When the Anders family were the only ones remaining, John whispered his question to Jasmine. "What's your classmate's relationship with Better?" Jasmine bit her lips as she was puzzled by the incident as well. She had already noticed the unusual atmosphere between Better and Elise, especially when he handed her a mysterious document. "What's that document about?" While she was lost in her thoughts, he had already returned and cast a glance at Jasmine before he directly voiced his thoughts. "Personally, I stress on a student's talent a lot when it comes to selecting students. How about this? We will put your skills to the test." As he was speaking, he casually picked up a piece of A4 paper, which was full of Chinese words, from his desk and handed it to her. "I'll give you 15 minutes to translate this." Jasmine collected her thoughts and instantly replied, "Sure." Then, she took that piece of paper to one side and carefully translated the material. The first few sentences that she started on were as easy as pie and she managed to complete them with little effort. However, when she reached the third or fourth line, she found the words a little tough to translate. Yet, as she continued, she stumbled upon a number of professional terms, which caused her to break out in sweat as she was unable to completely translate those terms. Soon, the time was up, and she handed her work to Better. However, he had a general idea of her current level with a mere glance. "Your foundation is fine, but your professional vocabulary is very much lacking. Let's test your speaking skills then." Then, he retrieved a book and asked Jasmine to read a passage. As a matter of fact, her Chinese pronunciation was quite all right, but she had a strong accent, just like most children from their country. It was slightly different from what a native speaker spoke in. After hearing it, he commented, "Your child has good basics, but she won't be able to keep up with my teaching. I'm afraid that learning from me would only delay her progress, so I suggest that you find another teacher for her." Jasmine felt like a bucket of cold water was poured in her direction, to extinguish all her hopes. Her parents were shocked by Better's unhesitating rejection. "Mr. Better, please reconsider your decision. My child is really an intelligent kid. You really should consider again." Although Better himself was aware that being honest would hurt their feelings, he was used to speaking his mind, and disliked beating around the bush. Talent plays an important role in learning a foreign language, and apparently, your child's talent isn't particularly outstanding. On the other hand, I'm extremely strict when it comes to accepting students. I'm sorry, but your child doesn't meet my requirements. How well do I have to be in order to meet your requirements? A stubborn Jasmine asked in her persistence. He pursed his lips and replied, "Elise is your classmate, right? If your speaking skill is at her level, I would probably consider accepting you." After hearing Better's reply, she was stupefied. The whole purpose of her coming to him to learn Chinese was to surpass Elise in the language. In fact, Jasmine had personally felt that she was on the same level as Elise, but he made it clear that she was nowhere as good. "Would you please give her another chance?" Jasmine's parents persisted, but as someone who stuck to his decision, he refused to give them even a glimmer of hope. After that, she left Better's house with her head bowed, as thoughts raced in her mind. Lastly, her gaze darkened, as if she had already made up her mind on something. As she held the documents that Better gave her, Elise headed straight for home. It was only after she locked herself in her room that she opened the document. It was a 30-page document fully written in French, which she started to translate without any further delay. After some time, she heard a knock at the door. "Who's there?" The maid answered. "Miss Sinclair, sir has asked me to bring you drinks." Elise put down her pen and used something to hide the document before opening the door. "Hand me the drink." Without giving the maid any chance to enter the room, Elise took the beverage and immediately closed the door. Her action was indicative of her being on guard. It was after she drank her beverage that she continued with her translation. Although she had busied herself until dusk, she had only managed to finish translating 1/3 of the said document. Then, she tucked it away before washing up and going to bed. It was a Monday morning, when the air was fresh and the day was bright. As soon as Elise arrived at the school compound, Michaela waved at her from not far away. Elise. Elise smiled and approached her. "Good morning, Michaela." Michaela held Elise's hand and asked in a soft voice, "Have you completed your maths homework?" "Yes. I don't know how to answer the last 2 questions." A pitiful look appeared on Michaela's face as she whimpered. "Please let me copy yours." Elise rubbed Michaela's head. "I'll teach you later." Upon hearing it, Michaela's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's great." Hence, the two of them chatted and laughed while they headed toward the school building. Jasmine had seen them from afar and followed them all the way to their classroom before she casually went to her seat while intermittently glancing at Elise. On the other hand, Elise attentively taught Michaela how to solve the problems. As Elise's methods were clear and concise, Michaela managed to grasp the concept after only listening once. "Elise, you are amazing. Your method is way easier than what the maths teacher taught." "Yes, just look at it from another angle and you will be fine once you understand it. I might as well quit tuition, since learning from you will definitely be more effective," Michaela commented, wearing a look of admiration on her face. At this moment, she returned to her seat as their maths teacher had already entered the classroom. Since Elise had mastered the high school curriculum, she set aside the mathematics textbook on the desk and continued to translate her document. The maths teacher, who viewed Elise as a bright student who deserved extra attention, naturally kept an eye on her. As such, when she realized that Elise wasn't paying attention in class, she was annoyed and snarled, "Elise, please come forward to explain this question to your fellow classmates." Upon hearing her name being called, a stunned Elise nonchalantly raised her eyes and cast a glance at the question on the blackboard, before she stood up. Before she could say anything, the maths teacher added, "Come to the stage and show the calculation to class." Elise walked up to the stage. After another brief glance at the question, she took the chalk and swiftly wrote down the steps, and completed the question in less than a minute. The maths teacher was dumbstruck as the difficulty of the question was totally beyond the student's syllabus. Yet, Elise was able to solve it without spending much time thinking about it. She then checked the steps, and found no errors, which proved that Elise's ability allowed her not to pay attention in class. Elise's method and steps of solving the question are accurate. All of you should learn from her. The truth was that ever since the episode, the maths teacher never called Elise anymore to solve questions in front of the class. The last period in the morning was physical education. All the students changed into their sports attire in the changing room before heading to the field except Jasmine. When her classmates had all left, she furtively walked up to Elise's seat and opened her bag. "What are these?" Jasmine perused Elise's document, that was all in French, which she understood nothing about. Haha, Elise surely is pretentious. She contemplated for a while, before she made up her mind, and decided that nothing could go wrong, so she took out the document. After the physical education class, Elise and Michaela returned to the classroom together. As soon as they stepped into the classroom, a piece of A4 paper flew toward them. "Who is littering?" The moment Michaela asked that question, Elise abruptly bent down to pick up the A4 paper and tightly clutched it in her hands, while her expression instantly fell. She raised her eyes a second, only to find that her documents were scattered all over the classroom. The one better had asked her to keep highly confidential. Without a second of hesitation, she quickly collected all the A4 papers on the floor. Meanwhile, Jasmine, together with her gang, arrogantly looked down at her with a scornful smile by her lips. "Elise, are these papers yours?" Elise ignored the comment, but Jasmine was unable to stifle her laughter as she picked up the last piece of A4 paper by her feet. "What is written on the papers? Tell us." "That's right. I don't understand what is written on them." "Could it be that you understand French?" Rita echoed. Elise then snatched the document in Jasmine's hand and grimly questioned. Was it you who did this? Jasmine avoided her gaze. Elise, don't blame the innocent. Upon hearing it, Elise scoffed while appraising Jasmine from head to toe. You better pray that it was not your doing. Otherwise, you are dead meat. Elise, what do you think you are doing? We are classmates. How could you say such awful words? Rita fumed, thinking that Elise was being a little aggressive. Do you really think that it wasn't too much to do this? Elise responded with a question, while she had an icy gaze, which made Rita shudder involuntarily. It wasn't my doing, so what does that have to do with me? Rita returned to her own seat after she replied, whereas Jasmine feigned that nothing had happened, and calmly returned to her place. Elise ignored them both and took out her phone to make a call. Jamie, bring my laptop over here. I need it right now. Jamie, who initially intended to have lunch with his friends, knew that something was wrong the moment he heard her tone. Boss, who has angered you? I'll come over right away. You have 15 minutes to bring my laptop over. Forget about it if you are late. After saying that, she immediately killed the call. With a dark expression, she organized the documents that she picked up from the floor. Fortunately, there were no missing pages. No matter who is the culprit this time, I'll make sure that this person will be dead. The speedy Jamie rushed to Elise's classroom within 10 minutes. As he panted, he handed her the laptop. Boss, here's your stuff. She took the device and quickly switched it on. Her fingers swiftly danced on the keyboard, and after 2 minutes, she managed to retrieve the footage of the security camera position to capture the corridor outside the classroom. In less than 5 minutes, she managed to identify the culprit. The security footage was paused at the very scene when Jasmine exited the classroom. Boss, is this the girl who angered you? He carefully asked. When Elise hummed in response, he immediately volunteered. Boss, let me settle this. Elise swiftly rotated a laptop so that the screen faced him. Sure. I shall leave it to you this time. Rest assured. It's me you are leaving the matter to, after all. Jamie then glanced at the image of Jasmine on the screen, while a hint of mischief flashed across his eyes. A moment later, he started investigating her background and managed to uncover everything about her family. Meanwhile, Jasmine had no idea that her action had completely enraged Elise. She was currently badmouthing Elise with a few students, whom she enjoyed joking with, in a restaurant in the school. That country bumpkin acted as if she was someone special, but the moment we questioned her, she revealed her true self. She did not even dare to say a word. She must be feeling guilty. However, I'm quite curious as to who on earth would actually do such a thing. One of the students replied. Jasmine tried to conceal her unnatural expression as she commented. Who knows? There are plenty of people who dislike her. It must have been a punishment from a righteous hero. I see. Elise's gaze just now was so terrifying that it actually frightened me. I can't seem to get it out of my head. Let's drop this. A mere country bumpkin like her is nothing to be afraid of. Let's not overthink this. As Jasmine spoke, the phone in her pocket rang. She cast a glance at the caller ID, and answered the call in displeasure. Why did you call? What's the matter?